right, g'day everyone, and welcome to episode 25 in season 2025. We've got to the quarter century. Cricket season's here, so I reckon we should just about raise the bat for that here on Got the 4 Points. Welcome to this episode. It might be something of a wrap-up episode for Got the 4 Points for this season. What a year, folks. It has been an absolute cracker. We've really enjoyed bringing it to you. Plenty of goals kicked, plenty of goal-kicking tons brought up. Some incredible news stories spanning everything from umpiring to tribunals, plenty of draws, especially for the Uni Blues, to 300-point plus drubbings, a crazy amount of league wheeling and dealing, and we ain't done with that yet, by the way. Just wait for Footy Firestarters in this episode. Many game and premiership droughts have been broken, and a final series, guys, that delivered some genuinely unbelievable grand final twists. It's really, really been fun delivering it all, breaking some of these stories, chatting through them with you, Pete, all year, and latterly, towards the end of the season, welcoming Clay to the Got the 4 Points family. So I want to, before we dive into the what caught our eye and the Footy Firestarters, which you don't want to miss, Pistol going crack on this one. Before we dive into that, I want to ask you, gents, both for a highlight each. Just one highlight off the top. Clay, do you want to start off?
Yeah, and first of all, thanks for getting me onto the show the last few weeks. It's been great to get involved, and going from a listener to participating has been exciting and interesting. So thanks you. And we covered it a couple of weeks ago, but the highlight for me has got to be Skipton's premiership. It's great to have a premiership in your hometown, not just to see a local club succeed, but the excitement around the town, all the streamers and balloons and signs up on the fences, and all that kind of community spirit that comes along with it. I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago that maybe you don't quite get that in the Melbourne sort of clubs, but out in the country, the footy is sort of the heart of your local community. So it's been great to see that community spirit around. So that was really good to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Pete?
For me, I think it was probably a story we covered much earlier in the year, which was Portland Tigers breaking their drought, 34 game losing streak, breaking that, and then the funny story that came along with that they wanted to play the club song, and the president was very worried because they hadn't dusted it off for quite some time, only to be informed by the bar manager that they'd given it a couple of runs earlier the day before so that they could be ready for the win that day. So it was really great to see that. And, of course, to their overall season, in that they ended up sort of, I think, just making finals, didn't they? But not quite having the end to the year that they would have wanted. But really great to see. But what about yourself, Rob? What was yours?
Mine has got to be the absolute upset of the road, Kangupna being knocked off in the grand final. I mean, that just absolutely typified for me the way the final series was played, with so many upsets, so many big results, so many surprises, and so many close margins. I know, Pete, when you and I started this show, there was a bit of trepidation at times around whether we'd only be ever talking about massive margins, whether we'd only ever be talking about floggings and one-sided, lopsided leagues. But boy, there's been some exciting results and some close games. And
Yeah.
yeah, the final series really summed it up for me. So I'm not super excited necessarily that
Mm.
Kangupna lost, but the fact that such a powerhouse could be knocked off in the last game
Yeah.
really brought home to me how alive and well local footy is. It was a
Huge
really, really cool thing to see.
Huge talking point. Even we had our presentation night the other night for the Uni
Yeah,
Blacks, and there were guys there from our own club that were talking about that result. I think that result has captured a few people's attentions just because of how out of the box it was. So I think that
yeah,
was, an incredible moment, of course, for Cobram.
yeah, that's right. So, folks, we can you can find us on Got the 4 Points on YouTube or on Spotify, and you can send us any off-season tips or end-of-season tips through to the Gmail at gotthefourspoints at gmail.com. And Got the 4 Points is the handle on YouTube and on Instagram. So feel free to check all of those things out. Now we are going to go through the last few grand finals that have happened in local footy. There were three grand finals played on the grand final public holiday, in the lead up, of course, to Brisbane's epic AFL grand final win on last Saturday. We're going to go through those and a couple of other games that skipped our attention from the week before, and then Pete's going to absolutely crack into Footy Firestarter, the final one for the year, on a familiar theme but very much a developing story. So stick around for that. But let's start off. Pete, do you want to take us to the first thing that caught your eye?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm going to go to one of those grand finals you mentioned that was played on the Friday public holiday. The VAFA A grade played there at Alstonwick Park. Always guaranteed a lovely windy day at Alstonwick Park. I don't think I've ever seen that place not have wind. And it was a rematch of last year's grand final. So Old Brighton versus Old Scotch. This year, though, different result with Old Brighton making amends for last season by defeating Old Scotch by 25 points. I did watch the game. Geez, it was tough football in the first quarter. Both sides really feeling each other out, trying to come to terms with the conditions. I think that was felt in the scores at quarter time, which was Brighton 0-1-1 to Old Scotch 1-3-9. Even the chances that Scotch did have weren't amazing chances. So 1-3-9 probably felt pretty fair. But they always say the premiership quarter is the third quarter. Well, it was actually the second quarter that I felt made the difference in the game. Brighton came out firing. In the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, they were all over Old Scotch. And you sort of thought, okay, this is looking dangerous. I think that was reflected in a 4-goal, 8 quarter to Old Scotch only scoring 2 behinds. So that put the buffer out to a 22-point margin, which remained pretty constant throughout the match. So it's sort of the pendulum swung a little bit at times. I think Old Scotch had a period in the third quarter where they got to about 9 points down, but Brighton, who seemed to have a knack, not just in this grand final, but all season, to kick goals in red time, and red time goals hurt. And so in red time in the third quarter, at the 28-minute mark and the 30-minute mark, they managed to put on a couple of goals that put that buffer back up to around that 20-odd points. And it remained like that pretty consistent throughout. So big congratulations there to Old Brighton. 4 goals to William Lewis, who was named best of field. Get this, not a bad game from him. 14 disposals, 14 contested possessions. So clearly loves the hard ball, does Will. And 10 score involvements. So he made each and every one of those disposals count. There was only 4 of those disposals that weren't involved in a scoring chain. So pretty impressive there from Will. And very, I think, great to see Old Brighton get their first ever VAFA A-grade premiership off the back of that win. And especially happy for Harry Hill, who was the captain that missed out last year with the concussion protocols when the game was put to the Friday. And also just because he is genuinely one of the nicest blokes I think you will meet out in football land. So big congratulations there to Old Brighton, and can't wait for the Blacks to knock them off next season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we don't hand out compliments to opposition players very often in
No, we don't.
VAFA, especially not on their good bloke nature.
No.
So that is a genuinely well-deserved tagline from us. Of course, we are the paradigms of good blokishness in football. But no, well done to Old Brighton. I would echo those congratulations on their first A-grade flag. That's a great result for them. Happy to see them get the revenge over Scotch, and happy that Scotch didn't end up winning the flag, if I'm honest, given how they finished off the home and away season by smacking us with all their VFL players. So,
Great.
but also, good signs from a parochial Uni Blacks point of view that we beat both of those teams throughout the course of the year. So
We did.
That's a little feather in the cap for the Blacks, even though we weren't able to feature in finals action. And also very happy that I was correctly predicting Brighton as the A-grade premier at the start of the season. So that's probably my only prediction success, I think, for the year. But
Better than having none.
I'm going to take it. Take all of the wins that you can get. All right, Clay, what's caught your eye?
Yeah, so I was having a look at the Kyabram District Footy League. Now, this is a grand final that we didn't quite focus on from a couple of weeks ago. Grand finals played on September 13. So this was between Murchison Toolamba and Lancaster in the seniors. They both had a cracking year. It was 1 and 2 on the ladder. So one of those years where your top two teams through the year end up coming through to the grand final. They were both 15 and 1 and both over 300%. So really top of the table sort of stuff. They first met in the semi-final originally. So Murchison Toolamba beat Lancaster by 3 points. After conceding their first goal, Lancaster were ahead for the entire game. And at three-quarter time, they were looking good. They were up by 3 goals, and it was a fairly low-scoring match, 37-55 at three-quarter time. So it's a handy 3-goal lead there. Coming out in the last quarter, they kicked the first behind, and then Murchison Toolamba took over. They kicked 4 goals, 3 in a row. Their last goal came right before the final siren. It stole back the lead in the dying seconds, gave them a 3-point win and a ticket straight into the grand final. So Lancaster will be kicking themselves there that they've let that one go after having the lead and then conceding the final goal with seconds to go before the siren. In the prelim, so Lancaster played Rushworth. They flogged them 113-32, and that set up the rematch between Lancaster and Murchison Toolamba back to the grand final in the final week. Quite a close game. So both teams traded goals in the first quarter. It was 2 goals, 2 to 3 goals to Lancaster's way. Then Murchison Toolamba steamed ahead. They kicked 5 of the next 6 goals to lead by 17 points at halftime. Then Lancaster clawed it back a bit in the third quarter. They headed into the final huddle 60 apiece. And Lancaster came out firing early in the last quarter. They kicked 4 of the first 5 goals in the final quarter to take back the lead. However, after 10 to 15 minutes in that last quarter, they went on to concede the next 3 goals in a row, which put Murchison Toolamba up by 8 points. And to show desperation, Lancaster kicked a goal in the last minute, which put the margin back to 2 points. But it was too little too late at that point. The siren had gone, and it was a 2-point win to Murchison Toolamba. We say it every week. Did someone say good kicking is good football? The final score read Murchison Toolamba 13-9-87 to Lancaster 12-13-85. So they potentially blew a few chances there to convert an extra goal somewhere in the game. Just one of those points into a goal would have been a premiership. So say it every week, but it keeps happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rob, what have you got for us?
Oh, well, I want to take us to the Mornington Peninsula League. We've got another grand final that happened on the grand final Friday, but we'll come to that a little bit later because we have 2 absolute pearlers in the Mornington Peninsula League that we were a little neglectful not to mention last week. So we'll go through them. I'll take you through them both and then throw back to Pete. So it's a little bit hard to know where to start because we've got a Div 1 and a Div 2 story here. I'm going to start with Div 2, noting that I did spend a lot of the year looking at the bottom end of Div 2 with my paddock to premiership pick, Coringal, the Bulls remaining firmly in the paddock down there at the bottom of the ladder. But at the top end of the table, where I didn't cast much attention, it was Devon Meadows who have won, folks, their first ever premiership as a club in the Mornington Peninsula League. 48 years ago, that club was formed. They've been playing in the Mornington Peninsula League throughout. They were yet to win a flag. A huge result. I don't know whether you call this a drought breaker. I guess it is. But, geez, I hope, for their sake that they really painted the town red and white and black and whatever their colours are down there. Devon Meadows, fantastic result. Just as a side note, this was only slightly longer than the other longest premiership drought broken this year, which was 45 years, and that was Old Peninsula that Pete mentioned for VAFA Div 1 last week. So to the game down there in Div 2, Mornington Peninsula, it was an absolute epic as well. 5-point margin, Devon Meadows 10-6-66 defeated Frankston, bad kicking is bad football, 8-13-61. Nervy finish for Devon Meadows, having led by 23 points at halftime, maybe tasting their first premiership success in the halftime oranges, but they saw their lead whittled away throughout the second half. However, thankfully for them, they were able to hang on for a famous victory. So well done to the Panthers down there. That's a huge result. And it seems like things couldn't get any more epic down there in the Mornington Peninsula League until we look at Div 1, where Rosebud won an absolute classic by 1 point only against Mount Eliza. Mount Eliza came home with a wet sail in pursuit of back-to-back flags, but they finished fifth on the ladder this season, and it would have been a pretty impressive effort to win the flag from fifth place. They almost stole the show against the minor premier Rosebud, who actually won 7 more games in the home and away season than Mount Eliza. But really, looking at the game, Mount Eliza arguably should have won it. Again, bad kicking. 7 goals 12 was their score against Rosebud's 8 goals 7 on the day. And Mount Eliza, the Demons, led by as much as 19 points in the third quarter. And that was down to a straight kick at 3-quarter time. They kicked 1 goal 5 in the final quarter, but I did see that last goal was an absolute clutch snag from the boundary line at the 28-minute mark, setting up a really epic holding on finish there for Rosebud. Apparently the ball was buried deep in Mount Eliza's forward line when the siren went, and the reporting that I saw about it said that few people heard the siren. It was one of those moments where the atmosphere was so electric and everybody was so tense that only a few people heard the siren. Thankfully the umpires did, and the game stopped at the right moment. Now, Rosebud's last premiership was 10 years ago in Div 2, but I'm reliably informed by the Herald Sun reporting that is their first Division 1 premiership in 96 years. A stunning result for Rosebud, one of the oldest football clubs down there on the Mornington Peninsula League. 96 years between top flight premierships. So well done to the Buds. And another interesting stat that I saw is that Rosebud don't make grand finals very often in recent history, but when they do, they win them. So the last 4 grand finals they played in were 1997, 2007, 2015, and now 2025, and they've won all of those 4. So clearly a team unlike Collingwood who knows how to win grand finals when they get in them. And that's an impressive record. They'll be hoping to make grand finals a little more often so they can win some more flags. But yeah, well done to the Mornington Peninsula League on delivering another cracking season down there. There's been some big margins and blowouts with the bottom end of the ladder, but at the top end, extremely competitive, high-quality football with a really good final series.
It's incredible, Rob. Few fun facts. I'm pretty confident Mount Eliza, their number 1 ticket holder, is none other than Mick Malloy. I believe that gets a mention quite regularly on the front bar because he's an old Mount Eliza boy himself and used to play there at the club. So that's an interesting one there.
Surprised he's got any room to do that, given how often he's the number 1 ticket holder of a certain bowl venue.
Exactly. Not my footy fire starter for today's episode, but there needs to be some sort of interrogation in the off season from a lot of clubs around their sirens. We attended a lot of games this season, Rob, where some of the sirens left a lot to be desired. And there were genuinely some ovals that if you had a grand final played there, you would be somewhat worried that you wouldn't hear the siren in all of the commotion. I could barely hear the siren at Collegians in a just home and away game when there was very little, commotion. So
no crowd.
No crowd at all, really, and could barely hear the siren, and surely we can get away from having to use air horns for grand finals.
Please.
No air horns at grand finals. That's just
no air horns at major grounds ever. especially not VFL grounds.
Just pay the extra $10 to be able to use the horn. Don't use the air horn. But anyway, we won't get into that too much. But yeah, that was very good there from the Mornington League. I'm taking us not to a grand final, but more so some of the fallout from one of the grand finals you mentioned last week, which was the Bendigo Footy League grand final. I mentioned there last week the incredible comeback that Eagle Hawk had against Sandhurst, but also mentioned that it was filled with a little bit of intrigue, given that co-coach Clayton Holmes had allegedly, let's just put that in there. I don't know if we need to, but we'll put it in there anyway. Knocked a Sandhurst player to the ground who ended up needing to be taken off and taken to hospital with concussion. Well, the fallout of that has come about. Suspended for 5 matches for striking Sandhurst young gun Dayton Urata at the end of the first quarter, but the penalty has been doubled as the Bendigo League have applied the rule under the AFL National Community Handbook that states a league may apply at its absolute discretion a loading of up to 100% in relation to the base sanction for any reportable offence committed during a grand final. So it now means that Clayton Holmes has a 10-match ban sitting there in front of him, starting in round 1 next year. So really would miss, at least half of the season next year. However, it must be noted that Eagle Hawk and Holmes have pleaded not guilty to the charge. So I am unsure where that's landed in terms of when they will hear that appeal, but I think there's a little bit more to play out in that story. I thought the other thing that was just intriguing, just a little bit from my perspective, was the statement from Bendigo League manager Tom King, who confirmed Holmes had been given the extra penalty due to the rule. But said rule does state that it is at the application of the league itself, and it's a loading of up to 100%. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 100%. Just felt like a convenient statement of we were always going to give him double, but wanted to try and somewhat make it out that our hands were tied. The rule is the rule. There's nothing we could do about it. Still some interesting things happening there at the Bendigo League, and I'm sure we will hear more around the fallout from that tribunal. I think the other thing to note there is whether that puts, and I don't know this, but I'm not familiar with his suspension history, but I can only imagine serving a 10-match suspension puts him potentially close, or puts him a hell of a lot closer to the banned rule from playing Victorian football, which I believe is 16 matches. I could have that wrong, but I believe once you've been suspended for 16 matches, you actually get deregistered as a player in Victoria. So just one to keep our eye on as we head into off-season, I think.
Well, I wonder whether he'd be able to claim that it was only 5 matches that should go towards the 16 games. Yeah.
Maybe, not sure.
An interesting point, being a playing coach and being banned, is he banned from coaching from the sidelines?
Great question, Clayton.
Very
That's
good question.
Great question. Look, I would assume that he probably wouldn't be able to coach. I would assume that once you're suspended, any game day role that you might have, like I know, like they can't serve as like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like water boys and runners and things like that. So I have a feeling he wouldn't be able to coach. But that's a good question that you've put forward there.
It's sort of a double blow almost in that regard, then, isn't it?
Yeah. Which I just, again, we probably don't have the time, or we definitely don't have the time to get into this discussion, but the double loading for grand final, to me, just feels a little bit strange. It was, I think it was really brought in off the back of the AFL and what Alistair Lynch was sort of doing in that Brisbane Port Adelaide game. But I think people somewhat tend to forget that double loading didn't matter to Alistair Lynch because he was playing his last game. So he could have given him 20 years and he was probably going to swing for the fences still. So I just find it a little bit strange that it's been adopted in community football and that, I think if it was brought in for people who are potentially playing their last game, just going out swinging, I don't think it does anything because, we have a potential ex-reserves player in the Blacks who may or may not still be sitting out somewhat 6 weeks or whatever for a hit in a grand final, but it doesn't matter to him because he's not playing. So anyway,
that's a good point. Maybe they'd be better off looking at some sort of club penalty, like
maybe
suspend a player, but then add on I don't know, financial fine or something to the club.
Potentially.
I was thinking about this after we chatted about it, though, Pete. There is also a scenario where if you're coming into a grand final and you've identified that the opposition have one seriously good player, it might somewhat deter the old-fashioned, 1989 grand final first bounce. I'm going to line this bloke up and take him out of the game immediately. It might just, doubling the penalty might kind of impact on someone's mind about whether that's what they really want to do. I don't know. Maybe again, still not. If you've decided that's how you're going to win the game.
I can certainly see that argument, but you could probably also make that argument from round one up to prelim final, couldn't you? Like if you really wanted to win the game, just take out the best player. I mean, you could probably do that in the prelim. Anyway, it's an intriguing one.
Well, let's hope that Clayton Holmes has some long service leave saved up. I reckon he's on to his travel agent and booking a nice 10-week holiday to Europe, probably.
Probably.
Good luck with that, Holmesy. All right, Clay. Now, are you taking us back to the Kai Abram League?
I am. It's a bit of an unusual one, but I was flicking through this league and I thought, oh, that's caught my eye a little bit too much to leave this behind. Now, I know we usually focus on the seniors in the Kai Abram District League. There's no Premier League, Div 1, Div 2, etc. It's just seniors down to reserves. So I glanced upon the reserves results. I've never seen in my life a season quite like this. So we'd like to see a balanced season, a balanced league, and we want to see something competitive through the year. But I've never seen a team so far out in front of all the rest, which was quite noteworthy to me. So I think it's interesting to point out when a team has a year that's far and away above the others. The Toolamba Murchison reserves team, who the seniors won the premiership, the reserves finished on top of the ladder at 16-0, average score per game of 125, and an average of less than 12 points kicked against them for the entire year, for a total of just 190 points kicked against them for the whole season, giving them a percentage of 1,051.8. Utterly ridiculous. So I thought I'd bring up the fixture here and just read you through the results of the year. Bit of a twist. This might be a bigger result than Kangupna. So we've got versus Gigari, 60-22 win. Against Stanhope, 115-27 win. Against Shep East, 19-111 win. Against Violettown, 256-0 win. Against Longwood, 111-8. Against Rushworth, 176-24. Against Avenel, 127-8. Against Nagambie, 107-12. Andira, 218-0. Telegarutna, 93-8. Round 11, they'll have a disappointing week here. They'll think bye. Against Merrigum, 100-0. Lancaster, 106-14. Shep East, 117-36. Stanhope, 100-0. Gigari, 101-12. 17, another disappointing bye. Violettown, 100-0. Taking them through the end of the home and away season. Get to finals, beat Lancaster 64-28. Ticket into the grand final against Stanhope again, who they'd previously pumped through the year. They lost 45-50. It's their lowest score for the year. It's their highest score against them by almost double. And their one and only loss for the year.
Oh boy.
They will be spewing.
Oh boy. What what can possibly have gone on there?
I have no idea, but it was, yeah, not expected.
No, that's extraordinary. That's a fantastic story. Um, Injuries. I mean, the seniors were
Yeah,
playing in the grand final too. Maybe there were senior
true. Could have been a
injuries
few
as well.
promotions that come up from
Yeah,
reserves to seniors.
yeah. Did a few boys get on the piss a bit early, thinking they had it won?
Celebrating on the Friday night. Yeah.
Not not only that, if you look at that's an incredible win by Stanhope because
Mm,
if you look at the round 15 game where Murchison 100 to Stanhope 0,
yeah.
that's a forfeit.
Yeah.
Stanhope have forfeited.
They didn't actually have a team.
They didn't even have a team. And then what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks later, they've come up and knocked them off in the grand final. Sorry, we don't have enough boys this week. Followed by, oh, by the way, we're going to
Just
win.
tip them over.
You know what? That is just classic. Stanhope is like, we're just going to tactically throw this one because we're saving ourselves for the
Have a
big
rest
one.
this week, boys.
Yeah. We've got these blokes covered. We don't need to worry about it. We just take the week off.
False sense of security job.
I mean, if you if you look at Stanhope's season in comparison, they finished fourth on the ladder. The results have not been super kind to them. Uh, The last round, in round 18, they lose to Lancaster without scoring. 10-8, 68 to 0-0, not a forfeit, just a genuine loss without scoring. Then they roll into an elimination final, defeat Gigari by 19 points. Then Avenel in the semi-final by 17 points. Then just completely flip the script against Lancaster in the prelim and win by 23 points, having actually scored. And then 5 points in the grand final. Like, how do you go
Doesn't make
from not
sense.
scoring in the last round of the season to winning a grand final?
I reckon there's been some very tactical maneuvering of players in the Stanhope Football Club.
Mm.
That's got to be a scenario of a lot of senior players
I,
managed to make themselves eligible for reserve selection in the
Yeah.
finals.
I think there's only one thing you can do, which we need to spend some time going through that first game, Stanhope versus Murchison to Lambert, where it was like nearly 100 points. And then just compare those lists with what the
Yeah.
lists look like in grand final. But even comparing the list to the team that didn't score against Lancaster in the last round, how many of those players are playing in the grand final that win it? That's a
Yeah.
good find, Clayton. That's a
That's a
great
great find. And it's got us scratching our heads, literally.
I mean, we thought the Kingutna one was bad, but that is what was it? A percentage of 1,000?
Yeah, 1,051.58. Like we get to the 2, 3, 400 mark regularly, and that's a great team, but I don't think I've seen anything with four figures.
What do you?
Not except in Northwest Tasmania where they do things
Yeah.
differently. But
What do you think the coach? What do you think the coach says at the end of that grand final? Like what? What do you?
Yeah.
You know what I do if I'm the coach of that team? I go in,
resign.
I grab my bag, I get into the car, and I try. I don't
boys.
even say anything to him. I just
No.
go. I don't even say "see you, boys." I just grab my bag. I go. I
leave.
get in the car, and I just go. I don't care if I've given four of them a lift to the game. I'm out.
Find your own way.
I'm like yeah. I need moments of peace. I would have thought. Oh wow,
The league was struggling to unengrave that cup.
yeah. They went, well, one of the ones we can get done already is this one. Oh, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
wrong coloured ribbons tied on and everything. Oh boy. Very good. Look, congratulations, Stanhope. Unreal. Well, we've got nothing better than that, really, in terms of stories to cover. But still, some very interesting football happening down in the Hampden League. So one of the grand finals that happened on AFL Grand Final Friday was North Warrnambool. Now, they have broken a 31-year premiership drought, so not quite as impressive as Devon Meadows 48 or Rosebud's Div 196, but 31 years, very impressive all the same. North Warrnambool winning down there against the Koroit Saints, who had a really good finish to the year, actually. but couldn't get the job done on grand final day. So final margin 13-12-90 for the North Warrnambool Eagles over Koroit Saints 7-6-48. Looked to me like a very similar run sheet to the AFL Grand Final. Super tight first half, pretty much a kick in at the whole first half. But in this case, it was 4-1 in the third quarter for the Eagles and 5-2 in the final quarter to cement the win. So they were led, North Warrnambool, by Nathan Vardy and Michael Barlow, ex-AFL players. And Michael Barlow also a very successful career post-AFL, winning a flag at Werribee too. It was the first premiership for North Warrnambool since 1994. And actually, at that stage, the club was called Northern Districts and playing in the Warrnambool District League. So 31-year premiership drought, but actually their first flag in that league under that name. And Werribee VFL listed player Jackson Grundy was best on ground for the Eagles. So well done to North Warrnambool, Hampden League premiers.
Just on that one, Rob, I think we covered the Hampden League final last season. And from memory, I believe that North Warrnambool actually lost with potentially some more impressive players in. I know they had Vardy and Barlow in last season as well, but I thought they might have had a couple of other ex-AFL blokes last season as well.
I think you could be right. And you've pointed out something that I neglected to say in my rundown there. They'd actually lost the previous 4 grand finals, North Warrnambool.
Oh,
wow.
Sorry, that was a big part of the story that I left out.
Yeah.
So they did lose last year, but they actually had lost the previous 4. So
there you go.
So yes, they won the flag, and finally, so an extra little bit of icing on the cake there.
It's been interesting between your couple of stories, Rob. It's that determination of success, isn't it? So do you look at Rosebud and go, they don't make many grand finals, but they've won in 97, 2007, 2015 and 2025. So when they make them, they win them. Or you've got a North Warrnambool that have, making lots of grand finals, having a lot of success, but not getting across the line as much as they might like. What is success? Is success always being up there and being competitive for it? Or is success actually winning the premiership regardless of what you do in the seasons between them? I think that's always an interesting one to look at.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Clay, what else has caught your eye?
This is less of a game review and more of a story of personal triumph that I came across earlier in the year, and I've seen this bloke pop up a few times on social media. For me, a story of personal triumph, grit, and sheer determination. It's this guy Jacob Mibus from Penshurst Bombers in the Mindanera and District League. So Skipton, where I'm from, is just right on the border of the cutoff from this league, which runs right across to the Southern Grampians. He's played 18 games this season, kicked 44 goals, and he was named in the best 7 times. So far, it's all sounding pretty unnoteworthy. But get this, he's only got one leg. According to a story posted on the official AFL page, he lost a leg in a farming accident at age 7. And within 12 months, he was back playing for his junior club with a prosthetic leg on. He's now 24 years old. He's played 15 seasons back-to-back for the Penshurst Bombers, including in their senior premiership last year. And aside from a few games of 1 or 2 goals this year, he's also kicked 3 goals against Caramit, 4 against Glen Thompson Dunkeld and Wycliffe Lake Bolac, and then Caramit again later in the year. Kicked 5 against Hawkesdale MacArthur and 6 against Glen Thompson Dunkeld. So this guy's come out, absolutely smashed every sort of thing that was going against him, and he's really succeeding. So that's just, I think, purely down to his own self-determination to really get out there and get going, and quite an inspiring story.
Yeah, that's a really inspiring story. And we were lucky enough to have Andy Munro on the show of Footy Jumpers and local footy grounds Facebook page fame. And he was lucky enough to go and see Jacob play earlier this year for Penshurst, and put some really cool videos up. So go and find that story on the local footy grounds page of Andy Munro to check out some footage of him playing and kicking goals. And what an amazing story of determination. And unbelievable amount of skill he must have as well to
Yep.
and what a player he could have been
Well,
at
that's
maybe
right.
even a higher level if he'd not
Yep,
had that accident.
definitely.
Yeah,
And some of the
incredible.
footage I was seeing too, it wasn't just, taking a mark and kicking a goal, which is, fantastic enough as it is, but he's running in hard, he's getting into the pack and the tackles and like really,
Yeah,
not afraid to get in there. So,
yeah.
he hasn't really let this stop him. He's doing
Mm,
really well.
that's incredible. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Last one for me, and last one for the year, I guess, in terms of a game review. We looked a lot at the Geelong League this year, Pete, you and I earlier on. But again, we focused extensively on the bottom of the ladder, given some of the big results down there for Lara and North Shore. But to take us out for league wrap-ups and grand final wrap-ups, the Geelong League grand final was a Saint off. On grand final Friday holiday, not quite as good sounding as a wang off that we had up there in the Ovens and Murray, but a Saint off nonetheless. St Joseph's versus St Mary's at Cardinia Park. Before I go on, I did just note when I was looking at the Geelong League that there are three Saints in that league:
Mm.
St Joseph's, St Albans, and St Mary's. So St Joseph's go by the Joeys, and their logo is a kangaroo, so that's pretty cool. St Mary's go by Saints, and St Albans go by the Super Saints nickname. So I guess that's what you've got to do when you've got three Saints in your league. You've got to start doing
Pure
Super
one-upmanship.
Saints, and you
Yeah.
know, good to see that none of the Saints are called the Devils because that would be a little bit confusing. Um, but anyway, St Joseph's were looking for their first flag since 2018. St Mary's won the flag in 2022. So these teams have been reasonably successful in the last decade down there in the Geelong League. Pretty close tussle all day looking through the play-by-play scores, but it does seem like the Saints, St Mary's, were just a little bit stronger and definitely more accurate. So they ended up winning by 13 points, 10-8-68 to 7-13-55. Um, yeah, winning on scoring shots there. Joey's, but not able to get the job done
Mm.
in the grand final there. Kyden Rayner, I don't believe any relation to Cam Rayner, was the best on ground down there for St Mary's, winning the Frank Foppiani medal. What a
That's a good
great
name, isn't
name
it?
that is.
It's
That
great.
is a real classic. I'd love to know a little bit more about the story of Frank Foppiani.
Mm.
Sure, he was a legend down there in the Geelong League. And shout out to Sam Burke as well for St Mary's. Maybe a little stiff not to get the Foppiani medal for kicking 4 goals. Um, it's hard not to laugh with that name. Yeah, 4 goals when the team kicked 10 on the day to win the grand final. Very impressive. Well done, Sam Burke. Well done, St Mary's Saints. And well done to the Geelong League on a pretty competitive and strong season at the top end, if not always
Mm.
at the bottom. And we know that the teams in the Geelong League will not be replaced. They will not be being joined by Geelong Amos or Anglesey from the Bellarine League. There's no option on the promotion relegation being taken up, despite it being offered
Mm.
by AFL Barwon. So it'll be as we were going
Yep.
into next season down there for AFL Barwon between the Geelong Footy League and the Bellarine Footy League.
Can only assume as well that that now resets for the next 2 year period. Would we assume that's right, Rob?
I think we would assume that.
Yeah.
It will reset and it will be resetting based on total club performance
Yep.
over the next 2 years. So I think that's correct, Pete.
Mm.
Yeah, so no change to AFL Barwon.
Yep.
And we will closely monitor the situation in the Geelong League as it develops over the off-season. Of course,
Yep.
North Shore looked in the end pretty lucky to even field a team.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll be watching with interest to see whether there's any unscheduled moves from AFL Barwon, even that the scheduled ones that won't happen.
Mm.
And I've just brought up Frank Foppiani here. He was a player for North Shore, won 7 flags between 93 and 2000, and one with St Mary's in 2004.
Wow.
5 times best and fairest for the league. Unfortunately passed away last year, age 51.
So sounds like a
Like,
very worthy
yeah,
name for a best on ground in the grand final medal. That
yeah,
sounds very appropriate.
yeah. I wonder whether they've just renamed that medal too, or
Mm,
just named that medal off the
Yeah,
back
it's
of
an
him
interesting point.
passing
Yep.
away recently. But
yeah.
sounds like an absolute beast. Certainly, sounds like one of those characters that you probably didn't want to go head to head with too many
No.
times, because it sounds like with that many B and Fs that he was probably going to have you measure quite
Yep.
a number of those times. So
And a name like Fop.
yeah,
Yes, the VOP. It's
What a
good, isn't
great
it?
name.
love that.
Now, Pete, you've been pacing out your run up. I've seen you. You've got the white chalk out and you've marked it off just on the boundary line.
Yeah,
And just to milk the cricket euphemisms, you're going to just run in, pushing off the sight screen here.
yeah,
We have had our eye squarely on the Bendigo League and the situation around Gisborne for some time. It's time, I think, to just explore this story a little bit further. Now, we probably will be bringing you updates on this story as it comes, if there are updates in the following weeks. But to take us out for where we are at the moment in 2025, tell us what the hell is going on with Gisborne.
And can we just press
yeah.
pause so I can get some popcorn, please?
So to keep the cricket analogies going, Rob, I'm coming in off the Shoa Backdar run up.
Right?
About to launch a 160-kilometer ball at Ricky Ponting's head.
A beanball, a beamer.
Exactly. Look, we mentioned it last week, and we mentioned it in last week's episode as no decision had yet been made. And then good old classic AFL Victoria making me look like a bit of a tit. I reckon about 2 days after that, they released the decision. And that decision that I'm sure many have probably seen by now watching the episode is that Gisborne Football Netball Club have been denied the move by AFL Victoria from the Bendigo Football League to the Ballarat Football League. So the Bulldogs were advised by AFL Victoria on 24th of September that their bid to switch leagues had been rejected, in effect forcing them to remain in the Bendigo League against their wishes. Now, I think last episode I read a statement from the Gisborne president, Tony Brancatisano, that was, I think we all agreed, pretty strong in its nature. Well, I'm about to read another statement from Tony that I think you could say is just as strong, if not stronger, on the decision that he said was disappointing but not unexpected. He said, "It's not the end of it. Bendigo Football Netball League doesn't own this club, and neither does AFL Vic. If AFL Vic want to pull the strings and tell us what we can and can't do, come down here and run the joint and pay all the bills. They talk about the viability of the Bendigo competition. How about the viability of our club? We are not accountable for the viability of the Bendigo Football Netball League. At the end of the day, we knew this was coming, but we've been working behind the scenes the last few weeks for the next stage. We won't just sit there and take no. Watch this space." So pretty strong. The Bendigo League themselves confirmed that the appeal had been upheld and that as a result, Gisborne will remain an affiliated member of their league for the 2026 season and beyond. And noted in their statement, this is a positive outcome for the league, and the Bendigo Football Netball League looks forward to the continued participation of the Gisborne Football Netball Club as a highly valued member of our league. The Gisborne Football Netball Club holds a strong reputation both on and off the field and continues to bring great value to our competitions. We extend our sincere thanks to all the Bendigo Football Netball League member clubs and AFL Victoria for their cooperation and support throughout the appeal process. The Bendigo Football Netball League reaffirms its commitment to working constructively and positively with all clubs, unless you're Maryborough and Gisborne, Maryborough and Kyneton, I might just add, but ensuring both club and league sustainability remains at the forefront within the defined framework of the AFL Victoria club transfer regulations. So A statement that's probably somewhat at odds with their member club Gisborne, in saying that it's a positive outcome, but also clearly a league that could give two rats about their clubs as long as their league remains strong and viable. Now, to the Ballarat League. The Ballarat League has said that it won't be involved in any plans Gisborne has to overturn AFL Victoria's decision to keep them in the Bendigo League, but Ballarat will support whatever the club decides to do. So no active support there from the Ballarat League, but should Gisborne find a way out of this decision, then they are still more than happy to welcome Gisborne with open arms. Now, I just want to make a couple more points here before I open the floor to the both of you. Gisborne's nearest rival in its current home is about an hour away, Castlemaine. It's just probably under that. If they make the move to Ballarat, then there are 5 clubs within a 30-minute trip. I think in a cost of living crisis, players, parents, families will start making choices that are better and easier for them moving forward, which gives me big concern for the Gisborne Football Netball Club moving into season 2026. Because I think if you are in Gisborne and you are thinking that you don't want to continue to drive to Bendigo every second week to play football, you have the Gisborne Giants, who are in the Riddle League. And I dare say that they might be a benefactor of this. Or you have many other clubs nearby the Macedon Rangers, or itself, you have clubs like Sunbury, Darley, Bacchus Marsh, Melton that might also benefit from this decision that has been made. The final point I want to make before throwing over to the both of you, in its decision, AFL Victoria found the transfer would be too strategically harmful. The Bendigo Football Netball League is currently experiencing challenges and opportunities which must be managed as a strategic priority and prior to club transfers, their statement read. I would put it to AFL Victoria that is one of the weakest statements I have heard when you have denied a club that's had almost 90% from the incoming league and 90% from your own club want to make the move. To say that it is strategically harmful, list the reasons. Actually do some work, get off your seat and stop playing Minesweeper on your laptops and actually do something at AFL Vic headquarters other than saying it's strategically harmful, because that is not a good enough response. I sincerely hope, without thinking that it's probably happened, but I sincerely hope they've given the Gisborne Football Netball Club more than you've been denied because it's strategically harmful. Because I would also add that I think the strategic harm has been caused by the Bendigo League itself. They laughed when Kyneton left. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. We don't need you. You're not adding anything to this league. And I think Kyneton are probably now going, I'm glad we got out of that league, because they are in a much better position. And we covered their incredible finals series run in the Riddle League. Maryborough, of course, we've spoken about their plights. I have not seen the Bendigo Football Netball League move heaven and earth to try and do anything for Maryborough when they were struggling. It just, to me, is a sign that they care about league viability, but they could give two rats if the clubs fall over, because they will just try and find another club, maybe a Broadford, to come in and just put tape over the holes. And I just think the whole thing absolutely stinks. And I think if AFL Victoria are going to play in this space, I think you actually need to be much clearer and transparent around what your decision actually is and why your decision was made. So that's my footy fire starter, lads. I'm hot under the collar. I think this has the potential to get real ugly, but I also just think at this point in time, let's give AFL Vic and Bendigo Football Netball League over to the preschoolers because I can't see them doing any more harm than what the adults are currently doing.
Wow.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. I didn't know Minesweeper was still on anybody's laptops. That's still a thing.
But based off the decisions AFL Vic are making, I can only assume that they've still got laptops from that era.
Now, you mentioned Kyneton. I've found a story out there quoting former Kyneton president Hayden Evans. Now, you mentioned getting the popcorn ready, and you mentioned some strong statements. Have a lend of this. Quote from Hayden Evans: Gisborne has to fight this to the death. If it means going nuclear and going down the legal path, then so be it. We tried to fight to be competitive in Bendigo, but it wasn't successful. We were lucky we had options. But why didn't Bendigo fight to keep Kyneton, and why didn't they give Maryborough the assistance that is being given now to Broadford? Strong words, fair points.
Yep.
He goes on. We were strong to the Bendigo League on what had to be fixed, but they wouldn't listen. They couldn't wait to see us go, but turns out that has blown the competition up. Kyneton is a proud community club, and I think the Bendigo League may be second-guessing that decision as their competition is now on life support. We haven't looked back since going to Riddle. Locals playing and having fun, crowds are booming, community interest has never been stronger. They didn't let the door hit them on the way out. They sound very happy. They are pulling no punches in their advice to Gisborne, and I think that really sums up emphasises the points that you were making, Pete. And I agree with you that the words from AFL Vic are meaningless without any further context. It's bizarre to think that forcing Gisborne to stay in a place they don't want to be is the strategy to fix the Bendigo League. I think at this point, the far better strategic decision would be to make Bendigo realise they really have screwed this up by letting them go down to 7 clubs and possibly 6, because I'm not sure Castlemaine would hang around that long either. Don't know about that, but that's pure guesswork.
Yeah.
But I'd say the better strategic decision is to let Bendigo suffer for a bit, get them to actually do a proper rebuild, look at bringing in an Echuca or a Rochester or somebody or a Huntley or a Morong. Look at getting them to actually rebuild from the ground up with clubs in the Bendigo area rather than trying to hang on to a satellite like Gisborne with no support around it, no support anywhere, actually. So that's really what I think about it. It's bizarre and it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. And I think, Pete, you were sort of touching on this where for Gisborne, they've got Sunbury, Melton, Darley, Bacchus Marsh, down that sort of side of Melbourne, a stone's throw away. What they're going to do, none of these players are going to want to play in the Bendigo League. They're all going to say, stick it up. I mean, they're going to, one by one, start going to all these other clubs. Gisborne will end up a hollow shell of a club, and there'll be nothing left to play there anyway.
Yep.
So I think Bendigo's digging their own grave by making sure that, that's going to eventuate. No one's going to be there to play whether they want to or not. In their last sentence of the AFL Vic statement that you've got on there about how they have to, they're experiencing challenges and opportunities which must be managed as a strategic priority prior to club transfers. That to me is the biggest load of bullshit where they're making out as though, they've got to fix these problems before we can let Gisborne go. But you can't make a plan for your league knowing that if you wanted Gisborne to leave down the track, you can't make plans for a good, stable league knowing that they're going to leave. You need to let them go and then build around what you've got left.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, agreed. I think I agree, Clay. I actually have some grave concerns for Gisborne as a club. This is how I think it could play out if they do stay in the Bendigo League, which I think if it plays out the way I think it could, then every single person in the Bendigo Football Netball League board, committee, the workers there currently would need to hang their heads in shame. But I think their plan is to attract your Echukas and Moamas into the league. And once they've attracted those teams into the league, to then let Gisborne leave and go to Ballarat. But that will be at the cost of Gisborne, who by that point, I think you're right, Clay, will be an absolute shell of their former club and potentially could take years to get back to any form of sort of, competitiveness and rebuilding. The club president from Gisborne has certainly made it known that whilst they're actually doing okay from the top level of talent in terms of convincing people to come play Bendigo Football Netball League seniors, they're actually having real issues getting juniors and also reserve players to go play. Reserve players, I think, would be much more happy to transfer across to Gisborne Giants and play locally than have to travel an hour nearly every second week to get to Bendigo. I have real concerns that once Bendigo get what they need, which is those clubs in that northern part of the state, in sort of those Echuca Moama area, that they're just going to cast Gisborne aside like they did Kyneton, and it'll be to the detriment of the Gisborne Football Club. I just will note, this to me feels like we're heading down a Rochester situation. So 1971, Rochester being wooed by the Goulburn Valley Football League to go there as it was keen to expand. Bendigo League refused a clearance. So Rochester actually went into recess across in 1972 so that they could recommence in 1973 in the Goulburn Valley Football League. So, that is probably the nuclear option, is Gisborne Bulldogs actually going into recess for 2026 to recommence in 2027 in Ballarat. But I know from hearing people talk around the Rochester story that they basically say that it took them years to then rebuild from that period of time because, you're in recess for a whole year. Players go elsewhere. It's hard to get that back. I do find it somewhat humorous that Rochester, I believe, even just as early as last season, was one of the clubs that the Bendigo Football League were potentially asking if they wanted to come back. And I think Rochester told them that they could shove it where the sun don't shine. So, there's some interesting things at play there, but I think you're absolutely spot on with the points that you made.
It's interesting too how Maryborough. Sorry, you go, Rob.
I was just going to ask whether if the nuclear option is for Gisborne Bulldogs to go into recess, whether this is being a league where people can be paid, obviously, and contracts can be signed. Is there a way that the Bulldogs could look at going into recess and doing a deal with Gisborne Giants to keep players around the town? I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah,
it's quite. Sure. It seems like if I was at the Gisborne Giants, I would be saying, I'd be saying, come over here, come over here, guys. I can really imagine that if there was some deals that could be done to sign 1-year contracts for some of their top players with Gisborne Giants, with the clause being that the understanding being that they'll play for Gisborne Bulldogs the following year in the Ballarat League. Don't understand the legalities of these things, but would be really interesting to know if that's possible.
It's an interesting one. Clay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's just feeling from Maryborough where they've gone into recess. They're in between a rock and a hard place where they're an hour from Bendigo, an hour from Ballarat as the sort of centres of each of those leagues. But the majority of the Bendigo teams are in and around Bendigo, whereas Ballarat is almost the outlier or the satellite of that league where teams flow all the way down the Western Highway, basically to Melbourne. That's not a viable league really for Maryborough to get moved down towards. So the only option is to get back towards the Bendigo direction. So they've been totally screwed over in all this from the
Well,
Bendigo League.
their obvious avenue is to play in the Maryborough Castlemaine League, but
Well, that's right.
there's,
Sort of
there's
drop down
another
a
league
division,
that
but
can't sort their shit out.
mm,
Well, we
Most
say go
definitely.
down a division, but honestly, Maryborough Magpies need to be in that division at the
Yeah.
moment.
wow, yeah, fair point.
They're a powerhouse club, but without any powerhouse form
Yeah.
or players.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. No, so look, I think as you said, Rob, this will be a developing story. We'll keep an eye on it and probably keep our Instagram active when updates do occur. I think to your point, Rob, yeah, you start to think of all the different scenarios. You know, could they play as a new club? Could they form a new club in the Ballarat League and just forfeit all their games in the Bendigo League? I don't know. Like there's a million different things you could probably think of doing. It'll be interesting to see where numbers land for Gisborne moving through to next season. Historically, and I wonder where Bendigo Footy Netball League would sit on this, but historically, when you haven't been able to field a majority of your teams, they have actually said, well, your club's in recess, you can't play. So I'm also intrigued as to what that potentially looks like if Gisborne go to the Bendigo Footy Netball League and say, look, we've only been able to get a senior team up and we don't really have a reserves or an under 18s. Whether the Bendigo Footy Netball League goes, oh God, well, we pushed and fought for them, so we've probably got to put them in. Otherwise, we look like we've got egg on our face. So I think there's a lot to play out here, but we could probably talk on it for 3 or 4 hours. So I think we'll probably put a pin in it for this episode and this Footy Firestarter. But that is the update as to where we sit today. I'm sure, given what they did off the back of last week's episode, which was make me look a bit of a fool once we filmed it, is that post filming this, probably in 2 days' time before the episode comes out, they'll make some other decision, or Gisborne will have their playbook ready, but we'll keep everyone up to date as it occurs.
Well done, Pete. Good Footy
Yep.
Firestarters, and well done on another year of Footy Firestarters. You had some good ones in there. Dominated by Gisborne, dominated by the Bendigo League.
Yeah.
They are writing the headlines in all the wrong ways at the moment.
Correct.
There we go, folks. That is another season of Got the 4 Points. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us throughout the year. Thanks to those who tune in weekly. Thanks to those who tune in occasionally. Thanks to those that tune in regularly and then jump on the show. It's really fun. We've had a lot of fun doing it. We've learned a lot. Personally, I've been, apart from, the stuff that we've just been talking about, I've been pretty impressed actually at the state of country football and local football around the state. Yeah, there's been some big margins. Yeah, there's been some challenges in some of the leagues, but really lots of great results. Lots of people still doing incredible things. Lots of volunteers working super hard to keep their clubs running. Lots of administrators doing good things in different leagues. Lots of amazing media. It's been really cool starting on this journey, Pete and Clay, with other people doing videos, people like Andy Munro, other people doing updates, even stuff like Baseline Footy on Instagram. I feel like there's never been more interest in local footy than now. There's never been more eyes on it. Big crowds at grand finals and finals all around the state. So it's been a lot of fun. We hope that you have enjoyed following the local footy with us. Don't know whether you're off to play tennis or you're off to play cricket or you're just having a well-earned break. Have a good off-season. We'll get a good pre-season in ourselves and we'll be back at some point through the off-season to preview 2026. Keep an eye on the Instagram for any updates, and if there's any really exciting updates on the Bendigo League or other league changes, we'll bring you a podcast episode too. But for now, we'll sign off. We hope that you metaphorically through the off-season get the 4 points, and we'll see you back in 2026.
Yeah.
See you later.